There we go. That should be what I want. So let's see. This is going to be a bit of a test stream. I've got my systems all set up differently now. So we're going to see how this sounds and if it's working or not. We're gonna review this little, okay, I guess it's on that side, article right here because I haven't flipped the camera. All right, fair enough. So basically, yeah, backwards. Cool. I guess that works. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. As always, this is Reverend JR, and today we're going to be taking a look at that thing, the thing over there. So, I figured I'd give this a shot again. The green screen stuff seems to be working pretty good. The comments are right there. They should be working, you know, that kind of thing. Let's take a look here. We have one person watching right now, so it is potentially working. The let's see here. Hey, that's a little better. That's a little better. Stream health is okay, so yeah, I can live with that. I'm going to be updating my router one of these days, so that'll probably help with that. There could be internet issues right here. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, this is the first test stream. I can probably start doing this more regularly now as well. So that's a good sign. That's a good sign. All right. So again, thanks for tuning in today. Let's go ahead and take a look at this thing right here from Ken Ham's blog on Answers in Genesis. No, kids, humans aren't going to evolve again. By Ken Ham himself. What is that? Today? That is today. So you've seen it here first, folks. And I do hope this sounds all right. I don't have any kind of audio filter on right now. So let's see. Curious kids, are humans going to evolve again? You can see the thing that Ken Ham is actually discussing right there. Let's try one more. Oops. Perfect. That should work. That should work. So anyway, are humans going to evolve again? That's a good question. The website The Conversation, which boasts supposed academic rigor, recently hosted an article in a series designed for children to answer a reader-submitted question, are humans going to evolve again? But this article showed anything but academic rigor. Now, as we all know, Ken Ham doesn't really like it when people disagree with him, or when he finds things disagreeable, I guess would be a better way to put it. So basically, Ken doesn't think we're evolving, and he thinks it's punctuated stages rather than a continuous thing that happens every time there is, you know, a new generation of individuals kind of thing. But anyway, the author, Darren Curnow, an associate professor at the University of New South Wales in Australia, writes, the short answer is that humans are evolving right now and will continue to do so even if we don't notice it. Which is correct. That's the reason you can have a different hair color to one of your parents, for example. Or to both of them, potentially, if you get the recessive genes from both of them. Because we are constantly changing and evolving. At least with every generation that we have. So, he then goes on to divide evolution into two groups, macroevolution and microevolution. I mean, you can. Macro and microevolution are the same thing. I mean microevolution, just evolution, period. But yeah, they're just the same thing on different time scales. That's really the only difference there is. Macroevolution is what happens over the long term, over an entire, you know, species or group of species or family or genus or whatever. Microevolution, or just evolution in general, is the trends that happen more rapidly within individual groups within a species. So, for example, you have ring species like the salamanders in California. which are, punctuated kind of along a spectrum, which basically means that there are several different groups of them that can interbreed with the groups nearest them, but the groups on either side cannot interbreed because the genes have drifted too much. And that's basically how evolution works in the first place. It's a slow process. He says that macroevolution means the big evolutionary changes, like the arrival of mammals or bipedalism in humans, which is, more or less correct. As the great apes developed the ability to walk on two legs rather than like on four legs as most other mammals do, that would have been a macro change, a macro evolution. This term really summarizes the belief in molecules to man evolution. But again, the molecules to man part concerns itself more with things that are beyond evolution, like abiogenesis, which describes how we went from the simple molecules existing to having life in the first place that can evolve. The evolution portion only refers to the changes over time in the living things, not how the living things came to be in the first place. But, and we can't have an Answers in Genesis article without the word but starting a sentence, microevolution is the small, almost unnoticeable changes, like the ability to digest starch or lactose, that might not even result in a new species, but that eventually cause evolution. But yeah, that's basically correct. Ken Ham does not agree, though. He says, but there are two big problems with this argument, starting another sentence with a but again. Right, two. One, macroevolution has never been observed. Well, that's false. You can see it in modern things today, like certain lichens or moss that are partially fungus and partially plant. And you can see how the two macroevolutions of those things kind of split off into, the plant kingdom and the fungus kingdom, but there are still remnants that are, clearly in between those two as well. Number two, macroevolution isn't evolution, or micro, rather. Microevolution isn't evolution. Well, it is. Any changes between you and your parents are a form of microevolution in the most practical, simplistic sense. Those are some pretty big problems. That should have been its own statement further down, but I guess that's more a critique of, the editing style than anything else. But anyway, macroevolution or interpretation? Well, both. What he's calling macroevolution, the evolution of one kind into another kind, has never been observed. Well, again, that's not correct. Because we can see in the fossil record and the transfer of genes and that sort of thing how we came to be different from the common ancestors that we had in the first place. We can even observe it today a little bit, although Ken would say they're not different kinds, but kind, he can't really, define, which indicates to us that we don't have to rely on whatever he thinks kinds are. We can discuss species, like with the horse and the donkey, and so on. Ken continues, what he's calling macroevolution, the evolution of one kind into another kind, has never been observed. Well, again, as I pointed out, that's not exactly how macroevolution works. The entire species can transition from one thing to another as far as the traits within it. So let's say, for example, there was a time when part of our lineage of bipedal primates had long tails, and then some of us lost our tails entirely. Some humans still get tails, but it's not very common. But that's a macroevolutionary trend, that humans do not have tails. It's an interpretation imposed on fossils, DNA, etc. It's not an interpretation. We can observe these things. That's why nearsightedness is a trait we can observe happening, and we can observe it partially based on whether or not your parents were myopic, and so on. We can actually tie these things to the changes that happen over time. Because of an evolutionary starting point, right. I mean, we didn't start with that point at all, but we came to that conclusion based on the evidence. You see, Ken says, we can observe that things change. Yeah, that's what evolution is. Evolution is specifically the kind of changes that affect how a species develops or individual members of it, and affects how well you are at getting to mating age. Or in the case of bacteria and stuff, whatever helps you, divide and create more effectively. So, evolutionists assume, no, evolutionists are not a thing. Plenty of Christians understand that evolution is correct as well. Those changes within a kind eventually add up to the changes between kinds. Well, no, because Ken hasn't defined what a kind is. Neither has Kent Hovind. He likes to use that word as well. But again, they're in the minority because most Christians even accept that evolution happens. A lot of them just think that it was, God's guiding hand that changed it. But, again, that's never been observed and certainly is not demanded by the fossil record. Well, nothing is demanded by anything, but it's what we observe. It's an interpretation of the evidence because of the evolutionary starting point. No, it's an interpretation of the evidence because we can observe the evidence and test it and see the results it produces. For example, I think it's Genesis 30:29, where it talks about the sticks and how the different colors of them, if you put them in water when the cows are in heat, and the cows in heat drink from it, then it will change the color of the offspring. We've tested that. We know it doesn't work. We know the Bible is incorrect on this, and it's one of those things in Genesis that Ken Ham claims is the answer. But anyway, macroevolution is really their religion. No, again, it's not. We tested the claims your religion made with the spotted stick tea, and we figured out that it doesn't work. If it's absolutely correct in the Word of God and His command, then it should work every single time. A blind faith idea to try to explain life. Not really. It doesn't try to explain life, it explains how life changes. Explaining how life came about is the domain of abiogenesis, something pretty much completely dissociated from evolution. Unless you want to determine how the nucleotides and stuff changed before RNA and all that and call it evolution, I guess. But most of us just call that chemistry. But I mean, to be fair, chemical processes also evolve over time. Like if you're using the strictest definition of evolve, or I mean, the least strict definition, which means to change. That's how you can do the chemistry equations and stuff in your chemistry class from high school. Microevolution, the opposite of evolution, Ken claims. Probably in folly, as he does. Now, what he calls microevolution isn't evolution at all. It's actually the opposite of evolution. No, it's not. The small changes we observe in populations and our species are real. So remember that. The small changes do indeed happen. In populations and in species. And we can actually show speciation over the course of like one of our lifetimes in certain species, but never mind. We can note and document those changes. Yes, we can. But these changes are always caused by a loss or a shuffle of information. Well, that's wrong, and it's demonstrably wrong. Like, let's see, what's the quickest example? Those tails. That's not a shuffle or loss. That's that's just a thing that happened that didn't happen in the ones before. Hair colors came about over time. Entire organs came about over time. New information, old information. It's always new information. It's just based on the information that came before, depending on how you want to look at it. I'm spending too much time on that particular point. A loss of information is not evolution. Well, it can be, but again, it doesn't happen often because the genetic code tends to keep all of it and all of the information that encodes for everything and just chooses not to enable it for the most part. And the things that don't get enabled tend to be the ones that don't get reproduced a lot. So, for example, that's why red hair is a lot less common now, because it's recessive, and it doesn't happen in pairs very often with people who have any other hair color. And then eventually, because of just pure chance, the number of genes for red hair slowly disappears until eventually, in the next couple thousand years, the last person with red hair will probably die out. And depending on what happens, it may come back or it may not. It may breed completely out of our strain of humans. Microevolution results because of created genetic diversity that is already present. Well, I mean, yes, but that's because all genes are present already and are just mutated as they're passed along, or even within your own body. Cancer is a mutation. Zalrock says, a rev stream. Yes, here I am. I don't quite have the lighting set up perfectly yet. I don't quite have anything set up perfectly yet, but that's not really the point. We're having fun. But yeah, I got my computer moved and all that good stuff, so now I'm here. Problem is, like I say, this webcam just sucks. So if I'm not careful, the green screen, you'll be able to see. Is it gonna fade? Is it gonna fade? Right here? Maybe. Oh, look at that. Yeah, this webcam sucks. It's an old one, but I mean, it works okay. I discovered some settings on OBS that make it look kind of better, make me look kind of realistic. Also, you're seeing a shadow right about here because that's where, like, my monitor is now. So that's good. To turn an amoeba, it's not even spelled right, Ken, into a man, you have to add an incredible amount of brand new genetic information. Not really. You don't have to add any. A zygote or a gamete are basically just two glorified amoeba, which is to say they have cell walls and genetic information and that kind of thing, that turn into a human based only on what's actually inside the cell. That's never been observed! Well, I mean, yeah, we don't have the entire process because it took somewhere around 4 billion years for humans to get here, and it took somewhere closer to what? 3.7, 3.9 billion years for apes to get here, and it took somewhere around something like 2 or 3 billion years for most of the animals to get here. Yes, we're not going to observe it exactly at every step, because that's not how evolution works. But we've also never observed a god creating anything. So maybe Buddhism is right, and we've just always been here. And the cosmic background radiation is just some artifact of the universe warping back onto itself, making it look like it's infinite when it's not. But the point remains, we also don't observe that. All we observe is the loss or rearrangement of already existing information. Well, that's true even if your God exists, because whatever he made still already existed somewhere. And, oh, he used a different conjunction. That information was placed there by God from the very beginning. Or not. I mean, no. You've all seen the contradiction slide before. I could add it in here probably, but I'm not going to do it right now. Well, maybe I will. Let's see if I have it readily handy. Image. Let's see if we can find it. because, like I said, this is still a test stream. We're going to give it a shot. Let's see, projects, is it in here somewhere? Or is it in my downloads folder? Where did I put it? Projects, resources, stills. Oh, I don't remember where I put it. We're going to find it though, because let's just search everything. Search everything. There we go. See, I can pop it right in there. I can, yeah, cool. That works. I wonder. I wonder. But yeah, you can see the contradictions here. We have Genesis 1:1, and then we have Genesis 2:1 down further here a little bit. But you can see I've organized it by color, so I do apologize if you're colorblind. But the colors make it clearer to see which direction the things happened in. So in Genesis 1:6 is part of day 2, when the sky separated from the ground, the water there contained in. That's when the and on day 3 the rains and stuff were created, and then the plants grew from the ground. But when we get to 2:4, for example, we see that there were no plants because rain didn't exist yet. So we have a solid contradiction there if we are to believe the Bible. Anyway, we don't need that image anymore right now, so let's take it right back away. Ken then continues, we're devolving. The human species isn't evolving, we're actually getting worse. With every generation, more and more genetic mistakes, mutations accumulate in our DNA. Well, see, here's the thing. Mutations aren't always mistakes. I mean, in one sense they are, because they're not the chemical reaction that we expect the RNA to make. But on the other hand, it's still a completely physical chemical process that's going to do exactly with whatever it is presented. So we might call it a mistake or a mutation or whatever, but ultimately it's just some kind of thing that is different from the thing before it. For whatever reason, the chemical reaction happened differently, but it happens so consistently in the way we typically observe that basically we can discount them as being different as a matter of shorthand speech. But then Ken takes that and just kind of shits all over it. Anyway, oh no, I'm going to get demonetized. I said shit. Well, that's alright, I don't have any money anyway. So anyway, Zalrock says, creationist being dumb. Again? Yes, it happens. Ken Ham has been told all these things over and over and over again, and he just sticks his head in the sand like an ostrich. Oh well. So no, wait, no, he typed it wrong. So, no kids, we're not evolving. That's right, no kids here. He should have put the comma on the right-hand side of no, rather than on the right-hand side of so. And then it would have been just, as it should have been. But no, we are evolving. Kids, I mean, one generation at a time. We're getting worse because of sin. Well, wait a minute, no. If God died to forgive us of our sins, why did we continue to inherit sin? If God basically forgave everyone of sin in the time he was here, the original sin should be gone and it shouldn't be passed down, and we shouldn't be able to sin. Maybe God doesn't understand time since he's not a part of it. Maybe it's not intuitive to him. I don't know. But no, we're not getting worse or better because of sin. Otherwise, all the sin that happened before Moses, or before Noah, rather, would have caused Noah to not have been, with a clean gene pool at that time, if sin affects the gene pool. Because the Bible's pretty clear that the generations that came before Noah, which includes his lineage, no matter how you slice it, if the entirety of humanity is getting worse because part of humanity sins, then Noah shouldn't have had a clean gene pool. It should have been riddled with mistakes, just as ours is. I'm just saying it's not even logically consistent within its own explanation, within the story of Genesis, where we allegedly get our answers from Ken from. And our hope isn't in some kind of human evolution. It's in Jesus Christ, who came and paid the sin debt we could never pay on our own when he died in our place on the cross, which is basically just God hanging himself to forgive us. Let me ask you, if I had a son, and then I got really upset that my neighbors were doing stuff to piss me off, and then I said, you know what? I'm going to kill my son to forgive my neighbors. Would that be a good thing to do? I don't think so. And then we get down to the rest of it, which is just proselytization and so on and so on. So that's basically that. There's not a whole lot else going on right there. Let's see. I'm still learning OBS a little bit here. It's been a while since I've used it. A few things are different, that kind of thing. Anyway, that's going to be about it for today. If you enjoyed that, be sure to click like, share it around, whatever. Do the things. My Patreon is still suspended for now. I'm not gonna, not suspended, but I chose to pause it because I'm not making as many regular videos. Although it seems like people still want to pay me even if I'm not making regular videos. So I don't know. Maybe I'll bring it back. I just didn't feel right doing it there for about a month or two while I knew I wasn't going to be making any new content. Anyway, leave your thoughts in the comments down below now that the stream is over, almost. And as always, this has been Reverend JR signing off. And then, when I get things straightened out, this is where an intro will go, but I don't have one right now. So, or rather an outro, because words. Alright, have a good evening. And this has been Reverend JR signing off.